My name is Lucas Mitchell, Communications Officer at Isla Grande Naval Base. My life boiled down to one word: control. I liked precision, protocols, knowing that if I did everything right, nothing would go off track. It was Tuesday, 11:12 p.m. The base was empty. I was finishing a security report when I heard the footsteps, firm, measured, the kind of step belonging to someone used to being obeyed. Captain Michael Torres, my direct superior. 34 years old, competent, demanding and, unfortunately, the man I admired far beyond what military code allowed. I admired him. Of course I admired him. Everyone at the base admired Captain Torres. He was fair, capable, he demanded excellence but also recognized effort. In the 8 months since I'd been assigned to his unit, I'd learned more about leadership than in all my training combined. I kept my distance. Professional, respectful, never looked for too long. There are rules, hierarchy, and the fear of losing control over the image I presented to the world. Until that night. The footsteps stopped at my office door. I lifted my eyes from the screen and there he was. Uniform immaculate, even after a full day's work. But something was different. Tension in his jaw. A weariness around his eyes I'd never seen before. Lucas. His voice was always like that. Deep. Controlled. The kind of voice that didn't need to shout to command total attention. I stood up immediately. "Captain, good evening, sir. Still working?" He entered the room, and suddenly the space felt smaller. Much smaller. "Yes, sir. Finishing the communications security report. It'll be ready for tomorrow's briefing." He nodded. "I came for some classified files. I need to review the emergency protocols tonight." "The files are in locker B7, sir. I can get them for you." "No need." But he didn't move toward the locker. He stood there, looking at me in a way that made something tighten in my chest. The air got dense, heavy. It was always like this when he came close, but that night it felt suffocating. "Lucas." He took a step forward. "Can I ask you a question?" I tried to sound calm. "Sure, sir." "Are you always that disciplined? So controlled?" He stepped closer. "What are you holding on to so tightly? Lucas? What are you so afraid to let go of?" Hearing my first name come out of his mouth was a shock. Officer Lucas. It was always Officer Lucas. I don't know if I understand the question, sir." "I think you do." He was too close now. I could feel his warmth. "I think you understand perfectly. You know what I've noticed these past 8 months?" He continued. "That you never look me in the eyes. Never." His hand rose and touched my chin, forcing my face up. "Why are you so afraid to look at me?" "Sir, we can't." "I know." His voice was almost a whisper now. "All the rules, all the reasons why this is impossible. I know. You think I haven't spent the last few months trying to convince myself of the same thing? Trying to keep my distance? Trying to pretend I don't notice every time you adjust that damn collar when you get nervous around me?" He had noticed. Everything I tried to hide, he had noticed. "Captain!" I tried to step back, but my back hit the desk behind me. He took another step. His body was practically pressed against mine now, one hand still on my chin, the other braced on the desk beside me, pinning me there. "Say I'm wrong, Lucas." His eyes searched mine with an intensity that made my chest ache. "Say it's all in my head, that you don't feel anything, that all this tension between us is my imagination. Say that, and I'll leave. I'll take the files, and we'll never have this conversation again." I wanted to speak, to deny, to keep my world safe and controlled and predictable. But I couldn't, because it would be a lie. And we both knew it. The silence between us was loaded with everything left unsaid. With all the looks I had avoided. With every time my heart had sped up when he walked into a room. With all the months I'd pretended it didn't exist. "I can't." "The rules," I said. "Rules." He laughed, bitter. You're so trapped in that control you can't even admit what you feel. And you can? Anger flared. You demand honesty from me while keeping up that captain's posture? His eyes changed. You want me to break the rules, Lucas? In a quick movement, he spun me and slammed me against the wall. My chest against the cold concrete, his body hot against my back. 8 months. His voice was rough now, low, raspy in a way I'd never heard. 8 months trying to keep my distance, trying to be professional, trying to pretend I don't think about you every time you come into my office with those perfectly organized reports and that unshakable discipline. My hands were flat against the wall. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could feel it through our pressed backs. 8 months convincing myself I could control it. One of his hands rose, touching my shoulder. Firm, possessive. That I was strong enough to keep the rules, to do the right thing. Captain. My voice trembled. I couldn't hide how shaken I was. Michael. The word was a hoarse whisper in my ear. When we're like this, call me Michael. And then he leaned in, his lips almost touching my ear, and he whispered the words that would make my whole world crumble. I can't keep holding this, Lucas. I can't keep pretending. I froze, caught between terror and relief. And then he stepped back. Suddenly, his warmth was gone. The weight of him against my back disappeared. I heard his footsteps receding. I heard the door open. I turned, still against the wall because my legs didn't seem capable of supporting me on their own. He was standing in the doorway. Captain Torres was back. Upright posture, controlled expression, as if the last few minutes had never happened. But his eyes still held that intensity, that warmth. Sorry. His voice had gone formal again, but there was a crack in it, something broken. That was inappropriate. It won't happen again. And then he left. The door closed. I slid down the wall to the floor. All the rules, all the control, collapsing. The problem wasn't his confession. The problem was that I didn't want him to hold back. And tomorrow, at the 7 a.m. briefing, I'd have to act like nothing had happened. I'd have to look into the eyes of the man who had just turned my world upside down and be just Officer Mitchell. But would he be able to do the same? I slept poorly. At 5 in the morning, I gave up. I put on the uniform with surgical precision, as if aligning the buttons could align my life. I arrived at the briefing at 6:45. Michael arrived at 6:58. Impeccable, focused on the tablet. He didn't look at me. Good morning, he said to the room in general. Firm voice, professional, completely neutral. A chorus of replies. Good morning, Captain. I said it too. My voice came out normal, controlled. No one would have guessed that 4 hours earlier that same man had been so close I could feel his heart beating against my back. Michael sat at the head of the table, opened the tablet, began the briefing without ceremony. We have updates from 3 sectors today, he said. Starting with communications, status of the encryption system. Lieutenant Harrison answered. Full upgrade, Captain. System running smoothly since Tuesday. Item by item. Professional. Efficient. He didn't look at me once. Not even when we discussed my sector. He looked at the tablet, took notes, moved on, as if yesterday had never existed. I felt a bitter taste of disappointment. Obviously, he had returned to his senses. It was the right thing to do. So why did it hurt so much? The briefing ended. Good work, everyone. We'll reconvene tomorrow at the same time. People started to stand, put away gear, talk quietly about the day's tasks. I stayed seated an extra moment, staring at my own hands on the table. Stupid. I had been stupid to think that meant anything. Lucas. My head shot up so fast it almost hurt. Michael was standing by the door, holding the tablet to his chest, eyes fixed on me for the first time this morning. I need you to review the transmission codes for the monthly report. There are some inconsistencies I'd like to clarify before sending it to Central Command. Of course, Captain, I said, voice perfectly neutral. Whenever you need. Now would be convenient, he said. My office, 10 minutes, and then he left. I sat there, heart pounding out of rhythm, trying to understand what had just happened. I left the room, waited 10 minutes and knocked on his office door. "Come in." Michael was behind the desk, focused on the computer. "Close the door." I closed it, waited at ease. The silence stretched for 2 long minutes. Finally, he spoke. "Did you sleep well?" The question caught me off guard. It wasn't what I expected. "Yes, sir," I lied. Liar. Now he looked at me, and the expression on his face made my stomach tighten. It wasn't the professional mask he wore in the briefing. It was something else, something intense, something that made me want to take 1 step back and 1 step forward at the same time. "I didn't sleep either," he said softly. "In case you were wondering." "I wasn't, sir." Another moment of silence, heavy, charged. Then he stood, slowly. He circled the desk with measured steps until he was at my side, too close to my side. "In the briefing," he said, "I ignored you." "Yes, sir." "Do you know why?" "Because it was appropriate, professional. Because if I'd looked at you, everyone would have seen what I spent the whole night trying not to think about. Captain, Michael, when we're alone, that's not safe." "I know," he said, walking around the desk. "But I needed to know if last night was real, if I imagined the way you reacted." "You didn't imagine it." The words came out before I could censor them. Honest, raw. Something passed over Michael's face. Relief, desire, fear. "This is going to complicate everything," he said. "I know. It could ruin both our careers. I know. You should leave. Now. Keep professional distance. Forget that anything happened." "I should," I agreed. Neither of us moved. "The report," I said finally. "The inconsistencies you needed me to review." "There are no inconsistencies," Michael admitted. Quiet voice. "I just needed a reason to bring you here without arousing suspicion." "Oh." He reached out, slowly, giving me time to pull back. I didn't pull back. His fingers touched mine. Just that. The side of his hand against the side of mine where we both held tablets. He covered my hand with his. The touch was electric. "I can't offer anything but stolen moments," he whispered. "Constant risk. You deserve to know what you're getting into." "And what if I've already chosen?" He squeezed my hand. "Then we'll have to be very careful. Nothing at the base, nothing in public." "That sounds lonely." "It's the only way to keep us safe." "How long?" I asked. 8 months, since the day you joined my command." "Why yesterday?" He touched my face. "Because seeing you alone in that dark corridor made me realize my fear of something happening to you was bigger than my fear of the rules." "I don't know," I said, my voice low. "I feel well protected now." His eyes darkened. His hand was still on my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone with a touch so light I could barely feel it. But I felt it. God, how I felt it. "Lucas." He said my name like a warning, like a promise. "Michael." The touch on my face tightened. For a moment I thought he was going to pull me closer. I thought something was about to happen we couldn't undo. Then there was a knock on the door. Quick, efficient, professional. Michael stepped back so fast I almost didn't see it. 3 steps back, returning to the safe side of the desk, his face rearranging into the perfect command mask. "Come in," he said. The door opened. Lieutenant Stewart, operations officer. He looked from Michael to me and back. "Sorry to interrupt, Captain. Do you have a second to review the patrol schedule?" "Of course," Michael said, tone completely neutral. "Lucas, thanks for clarifying those transmission issues. You can resume your regular duties." "Yes, sir," I said. I turned, walked to the door and measured professional strides. I passed Stewart with a polite nod, and then I was out, in the corridor, the door closing behind me. My heart was pounding as if I'd run miles. My hand was still warm where he'd touched it. And in my head, echoing like both promise and threat, "We'll have to be very, very careful." Back at my desk, I stared at the screen. Everything had changed. Michael had stopped fighting what he felt, and so had I. My phone vibrated. Storage room B, 10:00 p.m. If you want answers, I would be there. But was I ready to hear the truth? At 10:00, I pushed open the door to storage room B. Michael was there, turned away, studying a nautical chart, his shoulders tense. He turned. Our eyes met. And in that moment, all the air seemed to leave the room. "You came," he said. His voice was low, almost incredulous. "You said you had answers." Michael took a step toward me, just one, but it was enough to make my heart race. "Answers," he repeated, something like bitter irony in his tone. "I don't know if I have those. I only have truths. And some of them I've been hiding for too long." I closed the door behind me. The click of the lock sounded too loud. "How long?" I asked. Michael ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd never seen him make. The captain, always so controlled, always so perfect. Now he seemed almost human. "It was on Operation Deepwater," he said. "You were up 36 hours. When I let you go, you could barely stand, but you smiled and said, 'Mission accomplished, Captain.'" That was when I knew I was screwed. He stepped forward. I tried to ignore it. I was cold, professional. I thought the feeling would die of starvation. "And did it?" He laughed, a humorless sound. "Do you really have to ask, after what happened in the corridor last night?" The corridor, the wall, his body pressed against mine. I can't hold back anymore. I'd spent the last 24 hours reliving that moment. The intensity, the desperation in his voice, the way my whole body reacted before my brain even processed what was happening. "I didn't know," I whispered. "I never imagined you would." "How could you know? I made sure of that." Michael finally closed the distance between us. We were so close I could see the tiny lines around his eyes, see the gray at his temples, see the struggle playing out there in real time. But I can't anymore. Lucas, I can't pretend you're just another officer under my command. Not when I wake up thinking about you. Not when I spend the whole day waiting for any excuse to call you into my office just to see you up close. My chest tightened, as if all the emotions I'd repressed for months were fighting to get out at once. "This is insane," I said. But it didn't sound like a protest. It sounded like an observation. "I know. You're my superior. You're 8 years older than me. This breaks every rule. I know. My career, your reputation. If anyone finds out..." "Lucas." He touched my face. "I've reviewed all the regulations. I've lost sleep looking for loopholes. But when I'm near you, logic disappears." He leaned in and kissed me. It started hesitant, but quickly became urgent. He guided me until my back hit a metal shelf, deepening the kiss with a hunger months in the making. When we broke apart, we were breathless, foreheads touching. "How long have you known?" he asked. "About yourself?" The question caught me off guard. No one had ever asked that before. "I don't know," I admitted. "I've always known, I guess. But I never let it be real. It was easier to focus on the job, on discipline, on the rules." "I understand." He opened his eyes. The green gold seemed more intense up close. "And now? Is this real enough?" It was. God, it was too real. So real it was frightening. "I'm scared," I confessed. "Me too." Michael ran his thumb down my cheek. "But for the first time in 6 months, I'm not alone in that fear." We stayed there longer than we should have. Hugged in the middle of a storage room, surrounded by boxes of supplies and obsolete equipment. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't how a first kiss should be. But it was perfect in a strange, desperate way. When we finally left, we left separately. Michael first, after checking the corridor was clear. I waited 5 minutes before coming out. We left separately, but caution is never enough. The next day, Lieutenant Stewart cornered me in the break room. Fake smile, predator eyes. "Captain Torres has been calling you into his office a lot lately." He dropped casually. I froze. Just work, Stewart. Sure, but people talk. Favoritism. You know how base gossip is. He took a sip of coffee. Appearances matter, Mitchell. Sometimes more than reality. He left. He left only the smell of coffee and a sick feeling in my stomach. Favoritism. Gossip. Appearances. I spent the day paranoid. That night, another message. East Pier. Midnight. We need to talk. The East Pier was in the most isolated part of the base, used only for maintenance of smaller boats. At midnight, it was deserted. Michael was already there when I arrived, leaning against a post, looking out at the ocean. The full moon reflected on the water, creating a silver path that seemed to lead to infinity. "Stewart talked to you," he said. It wasn't a question. "He talked to you too?" "Not directly, but I heard the comments, the looks." Michael turned to me. "Sorry, I should have been more careful. It wasn't your fault." "It was." He clenched his fists. "I knew the risks, knew any slip would be noticed. But I was selfish. I wanted to see you. I wanted to," I interrupted. "It wasn't just you, Michael. I made choices too." He sighed, ran a hand over his face, a tired gesture. "You're not the first," Michael said, looking at the sea. 4 years ago, another base, an older officer." My stomach tightened. "Someone saw, someone always sees. He was transferred north, career ruined. I survived because I was young. I was treated as a victim of seduction. They promoted me 6 months later as a consolation prize." Silence. Only the sound of waves hitting the pier. "And you?" I managed to ask. "How did you end up?" Michael finally looked at me. There was pain there. Old, but still alive. "Destroyed," he admitted. "Not by the career. By the way it happened. How something that was real, that meant something, was reduced to inappropriate conduct and lack of professionalism. As if what we felt was dirty." He stepped closer, took my face in both hands. I swore I'd never go through that again. "Then you showed up." He stared at me serious. "You're 26, a promising career. I've seen what happens when everything collapses." "Then why are you here?" I challenged. "Because I'm weak, and I can't let you go." I placed my hands over his, still on my face. "Then don't, Lucas." "I'm not him," I said, firm. "I'm not the officer you loved before. This isn't 4 years ago. It's us, now. And maybe it'll fail. Maybe Stewart is right and everyone already knows. Maybe our careers will spectacularly explode." Michael opened his eyes. "But what if it doesn't?" I continued. "What if we make it? What if for the first time you don't have to choose between who you are and what you do?" For a long moment he just looked at me, studied my face as if memorizing every detail. Then he kissed me. Again. Softer this time. Less desperation, more certainty. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "You're dangerously optimistic," he murmured. "And you're dangerously pessimistic. Well, someone has to be realistic in this relationship." "Relationship," he said, "relationship." We stayed on the pier for another hour, pretending we were just two ordinary men. No ranks, no fear. But when I returned, I saw Stewart at the second-floor window. He smiled. He knew. And he was just waiting for the moment to strike. And the strike came sooner than I expected. I spent 3 days avoiding Michael. Stewart's smile haunted me. On Monday, everything fell apart. "General formation," Commander Silva announced. "A formal investigation has been opened regarding a possible security breach in this base's communications." My blood ran cold. Communications. My department. Stewart had carried out the threat. All members of the communications team will undergo questioning within the next 48 hours. Interrogation. I would have to lie under oath or confess and destroy Michael's career, because I couldn't keep my distance, because I was weak, because I let those brown eyes break down all the barriers I'd spent years building. The formation ended. Men began to disperse. I stood frozen, unable to move my legs, as if the ground had turned to wet concrete and my feet were sinking. "Mitchell!" Michael's voice behind me. I didn't turn. "Mitchell, look at me!" I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and finally turned. He was 3 meters away, perfect military posture, face completely neutral. But the eyes were burning with an intensity that made me take a step back. "My office," he said quietly but firmly. "Now." It wasn't a request. I followed him in silence, across the courtyard, down the halls. Each step was a sentence being pronounced. Each breath was a countdown to the end. When we reached his office, Michael shut the door harder than necessary. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "What are you doing?" he asked, turning to me. I looked at the floor, at the perfectly polished combat boots, at anything that wasn't those eyes. "I don't understand the question, Captain." "Don't give me formalities, Lucas. 3 days avoiding me, and now this." "It's an investigation in my department, Captain. Of course I'm worried." "Worried about protocols?" He stepped forward. "Or worried someone found out you kissed me at the dock?" "Captain, Answer me, Lucas." Another step. He was so close now I could feel his heat. "What scares you more, the investigation or what it could reveal about us?" I couldn't breathe. The air felt too heavy, too dense. "They know," I finally whispered. "Stuart. He saw us. That night. And now. Now they're investigating communications and you think it's about us." Michael finished the sentence, eyes fixed on mine. "Isn't it?" Silence. Michael ran a hand through his hair. That gesture he made when he was stressed. When he was trying to keep control. "Lucas, the investigation is about leaking coordinates to fishermen. It has nothing to do with us." I felt the ground drop away. "What? It's not about us. It never was." He laughed, bitter. "You thought we'd been discovered, and instead of trusting me, you ran." "I was trying to protect you. You have a brilliant career." "You think I care about that?" He exploded. "You think I give a damn about rank compared to you?" "Michael." "No." He raised a hand, cutting me off. "No. You're going to listen to me now, because I'm tired of pretending. Tired of measuring every word, every look, every breath when I'm near you." He took another step. We were so close now I could count the lines around his eyes, see the little gray streaks at his temples. "The truth is, I'd burn all of this down. The base, my rank, my career. I'd burn it all to the ground for a single honest moment with you." "You can't say that. I love you, Lucas." The world stopped. The words hung in the air between us. Real, undeniable, impossible to take back. "I love you," Michael repeated, firmer now. "Not attraction, not just desire. I love you. And I don't care who knows. I don't care about the consequences. I don't care about anything except you finally understanding that." Tears burned in my eyes. I tried to blink them back, but they fell anyway, rolling down my face. Hot, treacherous. "Michael," my voice was broken, "you don't know what you're saying." "Then let them find out." He raised his hand, his fingers touching my face with a gentleness that completely contrasted with the intensity of his words. "I've spent my whole life following rules, doing the right thing, being the exemplary officer. And where did that get me? To this empty office. Alone. Pretending I don't feel what I feel every time you walk into a room." He wiped a tear from my face with his thumb. "I don't want to live like this anymore," he said. "Not when the only thing that makes me feel alive is right here in front of me." I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. All that existed in the world was Michael. His eyes. His voice. His hands on my face. "Say something," he whispered. "Please, anything." "I love you too." The words came out before I could stop them, before I could rationalize, before I could build another barrier, another excuse, another reason why this was impossible. "I love you," I repeated, and this time my voice was steady. "God, Michael, I love you so much it hurts. It scares me. It makes me want to run because I've never felt anything like this and I don't know how to deal with it. Michael closed his eyes. He breathed in deeply, as if my words were air and he'd been submerged for hours. Then stop running, he said, opening his eyes again. Stop trying to protect me. Stop deciding alone what's best for me. Just stay with me. Let us figure the rest out together. I knew I should be rational. I should think about the consequences, the rules we were breaking, the risks we were taking, but all I could do was tilt my head and kiss him. And this time, it wasn't hidden. It wasn't hurried. It wasn't stolen in some dark corner where no one could see. It was in his office, in the middle of the day, with the door shut but not locked. People passing in the hall outside. It was the most dangerous and most honest thing I'd ever done. When we broke apart, Michael rested his forehead against mine. His breathing was uneven, his eyes still closed. The investigation will continue, he said softly. They'll interrogate you. They'll ask questions. I know. And after that, after things calm down. He opened his eyes, staring at me with a seriousness that made me hold my breath. We need to decide what to do. How to handle this. Us. I know, I repeated. But now? A small smile touched his lips. Now, I just need you to stop avoiding me, because these past 3 days were hell. I laughed. It was a low, almost incredulous laugh, but it was real. They were hell for me too. Michael kissed my forehead, then my cheek, then quickly, my lips once more. Back to work, he said, finally stepping away, before someone notices you've been here too long. I nodded. I turned to leave. But when my hand was on the doorknob, I stopped. Michael? Yes? Did you mean it? About burning everything? He looked at me, and in that look was an absolute certainty that made me believe every word, every single letter. I left the office in a state of stunned silence. The investigation wasn't about us. It never had been. But the confession, that had been real. And now that the words had been spoken, that the feelings had been exposed, there was no going back. Stuart was still out there, still watching, still waiting. And the investigation, even if about something else, still meant interrogations, questions, scrutiny. Any misstep could expose us. But as I walked back to my department, all I could think of were Michael's words. I'd burn it all down if it meant having one honest moment with you. And for the first time since that night on the dock, I wasn't running. I was finally trying to stay. But fate had other plans. That morning should have been like any other. I should have woken to the alarm at 5:40, put on my uniform with the same practice precision, walked to the mess for coffee while mentally rehearsing the communications report I needed to review. 3 days after the confession, in the morning briefing, Michael dropped the bomb. Before the reports, I have a personal announcement. The room fell silent. I've requested a transfer to Norfolk. It's been approved. I leave in 48 hours. The world didn't stop. That's what they say in the stories, right? That when something devastating happens, time freezes, the heart stops. Lies. The world kept spinning with the same cruel indifference as always. The ceiling fan kept squeaking. Lieutenant Stuart kept drumming his fingers on the table. My heart kept beating, beating, beating. Each pulse a betrayal, because how could it still function when everything inside me was falling apart? This removes any potential conflict of interest or perception of favoritism. He said it like it was bureaucracy, like it wasn't tearing my heart out. 48 hours. Lieutenant Freeman will assume interim operational command until a permanent replacement is assigned, Michael said, and then his eyes finally found mine. For a fraction of a second, the mask slipped. I saw pain there. I saw farewell. And then he blinked, and he was Captain Dominguez again, impenetrable and distant. That's all. Let's move on to the reports. I don't remember the rest of the meeting. I know I spoke when it was my turn. I know my voice worked, that the words came out in the right order, that no one seemed to notice I was bleeding inside. But all I can remember is the constant ringing in my ears, as if I were underwater. When the meeting ended, I got up on autopilot. I left the room. I walked the familiar corridors like a ghost. I needed to process it. I needed to think. But there was no coherent thought, only chaotic fragments of panic and pain. He was leaving. He had decided it alone. Without consulting me. Without giving me the chance to choose. I was in the outer corridor before I realized where my feet had taken me. The dock. Always the dock. The place where everything had begun to fall apart and rebuild at the same time. The ocean was rough today, waves smashing against the concrete pillars hard enough to send sprays of salt water as far as where I stood. The sky had that gray tone that promised a storm. Fitting. I knew you'd come here. I turned sharply. Michael was 3 meters away, still in uniform, but something about the way he held his shoulders was different. Tired. Defeated. 48 hours. My voice came out firmer than I expected. Were you planning to tell me before or after you boarded the plane? Lucas, no. I took a step toward him, and some of my unraveling must have shown on my face because Michael stepped back slightly. You're not going to do this. You're not going to give me that look like it's hard for you too. You chose this. Exactly. His voice was low, hoarse. I chose to protect you. Protect me? I laughed, and the sound was bitter. From what, Michael? From the possibility of having to make a choice myself? From the chance to decide what I want to fight for? From your career being destroyed because of me? His composure finally broke, his voice rising. From the gossip, the accusations, having your name tarnished because your superior couldn't keep professional distance. So that's your solution? To run? I'm not running. He closed his eyes, jaw clenched. I'm doing what I should have done from the start. Removing the conflict of interest. You're 26, Lucas. You have an entire career ahead of you. I'm not going to let it be ruined because of what? I took another step. Now we were close enough that I could see the tension lines around his eyes. Finish the sentence, Michael. Because of what? Because of me. The words came out like a confession ripped from him. Because of what I feel for you. Because of my complete inability to keep things professional when it comes to you. The rain started. Not gradually, but suddenly, as if the sky had decided the drama of the moment needed reinforcing. Thick drops struck the wood of the dock, the already choppy ocean, us. When did you request the transfer? 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. Before anything. You planned this, I whispered. I needed a contingency plan. I knew that if I didn't cut it at the root, it would be impossible to undo. And they were. You know they were. His voice dropped until it was nearly swallowed by the sound of the rain. That night, when I said I would burn everything down, I meant it. But I can't, Lucas. I can't let you burn with me. I should have been cold. The rain was icy, my uniform soaked through, the ocean wind cutting at my skin. But all I felt was a strange numbness, as if my body had given up processing physical sensations under the weight of emotion. So this is a unilateral decision. That wasn't a question. It's the only decision that makes sense. For whom? I finally looked him squarely in the eye, forcing him to meet my gaze. For you? Because to me it looks like you're choosing for the both of us, deciding I'm not strong enough to handle the consequences, that I don't even deserve the chance to choose. It's not about you not being strong enough. Then it's about you. Clarity hit me suddenly, crystalline and cruel. You're protecting yourself, because it's easier to leave now, to convince yourself you're doing the noble thing, than to stay and actually fight for this. Michael went pale. That's not fair. Not fair? 3 weeks ago you had already decided it wasn't worth fighting for, that I wasn't worth it. You're worth everything. The words came out laden with a ferocity that made me stumble. He closed the distance between us in 2 steps, hands gripping my shoulders. You're worth every risk, every consequence, every sacrifice. That's exactly why I have to do this. Because you deserve an unblemished career, an intact reputation, a future not limited by you? I held his wrists but didn't pull his hands away. Do you really think I want a future without you in it? I saw when something in him broke. His eyes closed, his forehead leaning to rest against mine. We were so close I could feel his uneven breath on my mouth, the almost imperceptible tremor in his hands still holding my shoulders. What you want doesn't change the reality of the situation, he murmured. I'm your superior. There are regulations, protocols. That can be worked around. I didn't know where the certainty was coming from, but it was there, solid. There are precedents for interdepartmental transfers, for restructuring chains of command. Lucas, you said you would burn everything down for a moment of honesty, but now that I'm offering you the chance at something real, you're running. He opened his eyes, and what I saw there broke me and rebuilt me at the same time. Desire, fear, hope, pain. I'm 34, he said softly. My career is everything I've built. It's who I am, and I'm telling you I'm willing to risk it, but I'm not going to risk yours. I'm not going to let you look back in 10 years and blame me for destroying your future before it even really started. So give me the choice. I tightened my grip on his wrists. Stop deciding what's best for me and let me decide. Give me the option. 48 hours is not enough, Michael. You can't announce this and expect me to simply accept. For a long moment, only the rain answered. It had eased to a persistent mist, turning the world around us into a blurred painting of gray and blue. What do you want me to do? He finally asked, voice broken. Cancel the transfer? Stay here and we both risk being investigated, possibly dishonorably discharged. I want you to fight. The words came out simple, honest. I want you to want this enough to find a third option instead of choosing the escape. Because I've spent the last 3 weeks learning not to run. Learning that maybe it's possible to be honest about who I am and what I want. And now you're telling me it was all for nothing because you already had one foot out the door the whole time. He let go of me. The immediate cold where his hands had been felt like a prophecy. The transfer has already been approved. His voice was controlled again, professional, distant. Reversing it now would raise more questions than explanations. So that's it, I laughed without humor. You tell me you'd burn everything down, make me believe maybe we could have something real and then disappear with 48 hours notice? I'm trying to do the right thing. For whom? He didn't answer. He just stood there, uniform soaked, clinging to his body, hair plastered to his forehead, eyes full of a sadness I wanted as much to fix as to amplify. Norfolk is 745 miles from here, I said softly. Do you really think distance will change what happened between us? That it will make this disappear? No. The admission came so low I almost didn't hear it. But it will give you the chance to move on without the weight of an impossible relationship dragging you down. And if I don't want to move on? Our eyes met, and in that moment I saw everything he wasn't saying. The hope he was trying to kill. The desire that was strangling. The possibility he was burying before it even had a chance to breathe. You will, he said finally. Because you're young and talented, and you have a bright future. And eventually you'll meet someone who won't complicate your life the way I do. Someone you can have without sacrificing everything you've worked to build. I don't want someone else. You will want to. He took a step back, deliberately widening the space between us. Give it time. The rain had completely stopped now. The ocean was beginning to calm, waves shrinking back to something closer to their normal rhythm. Even the weather was moving on, I thought bitterly. 48 hours, I repeated, and this time it wasn't a question or an accusation. It was just a fact, a tombstone marking the end of something that barely had a chance to begin. I'm sorry. And he seemed sorry. He looked shattered, but not shattered enough to stay. I nodded. I didn't trust my voice to say anything more. Michael stood there for another moment, as if waiting for me to say something, to do something. But what was there to say? He had made his choice. He'd made it weeks ago, before I even realized there was a choice to be made. When he finally turned to leave, each step felt like a verdict. I stayed on the empty dock, uniform dripping seawater and rain, and watched him walk away. Watched the straight line of his back, the forced determination in his stride, the way he didn't look back even once. 48 hours. 2 days to decide whether I accepted his choice or fought it. 2 days to find out whether love was enough when confronted with regulations, hierarchy, and the crushing weight of what was right versus what was real. 2 days to choose between the safety of letting him go and the terrifying risk of fighting for something I might never truly have. The sun was starting to push through the clouds when I finally left the dock. Faint beams of golden light painted the water in shades of amber and bronze, turning the ocean into something almost beautiful again. But all I could think was that in 48 hours, Michael would be on a plane to Norfolk, and I had to decide whether I would let him go or whether I would finally, definitively, stop being so afraid of wanting something for real. The question was no longer whether he was worth fighting for. The question was whether I was brave enough to fight, and I had exactly 2 days to find out the answer, and the clock was already ticking. 48 hours. I woke up angry at him for deciding for both of us, angry at myself for almost accepting it. I looked in the mirror, adjusting my collar one last time. I had spent my life building a safe, approved version of myself. But if I let Michael go, I was doomed to live that lie forever. Because Michael wasn't just Captain Dominguez. He was the man who held my hand in the dark of the cabin even when he was scared. The man who whispered against my skin that he'd burn everything down for me. The man who planned his own transfer weeks in advance to protect me, even knowing it meant losing what we had together. And I wasn't just Officer Lucas Mitchell, disciplined and obedient. I was the man who loved Michael Dominguez. And it was time to stop being so afraid of that. His office was empty when I arrived. 7 in the morning, and the whole base was still waking slowly to another day of routine. But I knew Michael would already be there. He always arrived early, especially in the last few days when he was probably avoiding any chance of running into me in the halls. I didn't knock on the door. I just walked in and closed it behind me with a click that echoed in the silence. Michael looked up from the papers in front of him. For a second, I saw surprise. Then that mask of professional control he wore so well slid back into place. Lucas, if you're here about the report on... I'm not here about any report. My voice came out firmer than I expected. I'm here because you made a decision that affects 2 people's lives, and you didn't give me the right to choose. He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, the mask had visible cracks. I'm trying to protect you. I didn't ask to be protected. Lucas. No. I took a step forward, then another, until I was standing in front of his desk. You're not going to do this. You're not going to decide alone what's best for me. You're not going to sacrifice what we have without even asking if that's what I want. Michael rose slowly, his hands braced on the desk as if he needed the support to stay steady. And what do you want, Lucas? The question hung between us like a challenge, like a plea. I want to stop being afraid. My voice shook, but I kept going. I want to stop living like who I am is something that needs to be hidden. I want to stop straightening my damn collar every time I feel something real. I saw the exact moment his resolve began to waver. It was a small crack, but it was there. You're 26, he said quietly. You have your whole career ahead of you. I'm not going to let you throw that away for you. I circled the table, closing the distance between us. Say it, Michael. Finish the sentence. You're not going to let me throw my career away for you. He didn't answer, but I saw the reply in the way his jaw clenched. You think it's not worth it, I said, and it wasn't a question. You think what we have isn't worth the risk. It's not that. Then what is it? I was so close now I could see the silver threads at his temples, the tension around his eyes. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're as scared as I am. The difference is, you're using my career as an excuse. Something broke on his face. Something fundamental. I can't do this again. His voice was so low I almost didn't hear it. I can't build something with someone knowing the whole system will work to destroy us. I lived that, Lucas. And it nearly killed me. There it was. The vulnerability he kept hidden beneath all that authority and control. The fear that was as big as mine, only rooted in real experience instead of imagination. I know you're scared, I said softly. I am too. But running won't change that. You'll be in Norfolk, scared and alone. And I'll be here, scared and alone. And we'll spend the rest of our lives wondering if it would have been worth trying. And if we try and it goes wrong? And if we try and it works? The silence that followed was different from all the other silences we'd shared. It wasn't thick with sexual tension or fear of being found out. It was heavy with possibility. There is a way, I said. We tell. We go to command, acknowledge the relationship, and request restructuring to remove the conflict of interest. He looked at me, shocked. Lucas. It's the only honest way, Michael. They could separate us anyway, I interrupted. They could do exactly what you're already doing voluntarily, but they could also see that we're being transparent, that we're following protocol by acknowledging the conflict, and that we're asking for a solution that preserves operational integrity. Michael looked at me as if he were seeing me for the first time. When did you get so brave? I almost laughed. I'm not brave. I'm so scared I can barely breathe. But I'm more scared of losing you without even trying to fight. He raised his hand slowly, as if still unsure whether he was allowed to touch me. When his fingers brushed my face, I leaned into the contact. And if it goes wrong? He repeated. But this time there was hope in his voice. Then at least we'll know we tried. His mouth found mine with an urgency different from anything I'd felt before. It wasn't desperation or hunger or fear. It was a promise. When we pulled apart, I was breathless, but surer of anything in my life. We have a meeting with Commander at 9, Michael said, still holding my face in his hands. I'll cancel my transfer and ask to speak with him about a sensitive personnel management issue. And if he asks what it is before the meeting? A small, almost imperceptible smile touched Michael's lips. I'll say it involves a possible conflict of interest that needs to be addressed transparently. He'll appreciate the honesty. 3 hours later, we were sitting in Commander Silva's office. A man in his 50s with more ribbons on his chest than I could count, and a reputation for being fair, but inflexible. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. Michael began calmly, professionally, presenting the situation as the logistical problem it was. 2 officers under the same direct chain of command, with a personal relationship that created potential for conflict of interest. Commander Silva listened in silence. His expression didn't change once. When Michael finished, the quiet stretched for long seconds that felt like hours. Finally, Silva leaned back in his chair. How long? Sir? Michael asked. How long has this relationship existed? Michael didn't hesitate. About 2 weeks of active involvement. But the feelings have been there longer. Silva nodded slowly, as if working through a complex equation. And you came here because we want to do this the right way, I said, surprising myself by speaking. Because we respect the Navy and each other too much to lie or hide. The commander studied me for a long moment. Officer Mitchell, do you understand this could affect your career? That there will be people who question every promotion, every assignment? Yes, sir. And are you willing to accept that burden? I glanced at Michael briefly. He sat rigidly in the chair beside me, but I could see the tension in every line of his body. Yes, sir. I am. Silva turned to Michael. Captain Dominguez, you've already requested a transfer once. I can process that request, if you prefer. With all due respect, sir, I'd like to withdraw that request. And if I say the transfer is mandatory? I felt my stomach drop, but Michael simply straightened. Then I would accept it, sir. But I would prefer an alternative that doesn't separate us geographically. Commander Silva was silent for another agonizing moment. Then he opened a drawer and took out a file. Coincidentally, he said, his voice neutral, we have an operational restructuring planned for next quarter. The communications wing will be moved under the direct command of adjacent naval operations. Same base, different reporting structure. He looked at Michael. You would no longer have direct authority over Officer Mitchell. You'd be working in parallel departments under separate commands. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. That would eliminate the conflict of interest, Michael said carefully. It would eliminate the organizational conflict, Silva corrected. The rest, he paused, the rest is between you and your ability to maintain appropriate professionalism on base. Yes, sir, we said in unison. Silva closed the file. I'm documenting this conversation officially. Any perceived favoritism, any breach of protocol, will be investigated with full rigor. Clear? Yes, sir. Then you're dismissed. We left his office in stunned silence. It wasn't until we were back in the hallway with the door closed behind us that the reality started to sink in. Michael looked at me, and I saw something on his face I'd never seen before. Pure, unfiltered hope. We made it, I whispered. You made it, he corrected. You stayed when I would have run. We couldn't touch there, in the middle of the administrative corridor with people passing. But we didn't need to, because for the first time there was no fear between us, just possibility. 3 months later, I was working late in my new office in the communications building. The restructuring had happened as promised. I no longer reported to Michael. Technically, our professional interactions were minimal. Technically. There was a knock on the door, and I didn't even have to look up to know who it was. You're late, I said without taking my eyes off the report. Last-minute meeting. Michael's voice was close now, but not late enough for me to miss our dinner. I saved the document and finally looked up. He was still in uniform, but there was an informality in the way he leaned against the door that would never have been there before. Let me just finish this, and... But Michael was already moving, circling the desk, his hand sliding across my shoulder as he leaned in to see the screen. Always so dedicated, he murmured. Someone has to be. I felt more than saw his smile. Come on. He shut off the monitor. Work can wait. Captain Dominguez, I said with a light smile. You're interfering with my official duties. Officer Mitchell, he replied, hauling me up from the chair. Technically, I don't have authority over you. Technically, I agreed. He guided me into the hallway, his hand resting lightly on my back in a way that could be read as casual camaraderie. But we both knew the truth. The corridor was empty at this hour. Most of the base had already gone to quarters or into town. Michael pressed me against the wall, not forcefully, not with desperate urgency, but with clear intent. Does this feel familiar? He asked, lips dangerously close to mine. I chuckled softly. Vaguely. Except this time, he said, his forehead touching mine. I don't have to whisper that I can't contain myself. Don't you? No. His lips brushed mine lightly. A promise. Because this time, I don't have to hold back. I don't have to pretend. I don't have to be afraid. And what do you need? I asked against his mouth. You, he answered simply. Only you. The kiss began gentle, but quickly deepened. Weeks of pent-up tension melting into something purer. Something honest. When we broke apart, we were both breathless. Dinner? I managed. Dinner, he agreed, but he didn't pull away right away. We stood there a moment longer, foreheads together, breaths mingling, completely present in that space, no longer defined by fear or rules or false versions of ourselves. Just us. Authentic. Vulnerable. Free. As we walked toward the parking lot, side by side at a distance only slightly closer than proper, I thought of all the moments that had led here. The initial panic when Michael pressed me against the wall and whispered he couldn't contain himself. The confusion the next morning when he acted as if nothing had happened. The first time we kissed in the storage room, both of us trembling with fear and desire. The investigation that forced us to confess our feelings before we were ready. His decision to sacrifice himself, and my refusal to accept that sacrifice. Every moment had been necessary. Every fear, every hesitation, every act of courage, because they brought us here, to this place where we no longer had to hide who we were. "What are you thinking about?" Michael asked as he unlocked the car. "That I'm 26, I said, echoing his words from months ago, and that I have my whole life ahead of me. He looked at me over the roof of the car, a question in his eyes. "And that I want to spend that whole life discovering who I am when I'm not afraid," I finished, "and who we are together when we choose to be authentic." The smile that lit his face was rare, precious. "Me too," he said softly. We left the base together. It wasn't easy or safe, but it was real. In the end, the walls that trap us are the ones we build ourselves, and freedom is having the courage to tear them down. Image end card. Inscreva-se para mais histórias.